Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So in today's message, I want to talk a little bit about some symbolism regarding the journey of our soul and specifically our transformation, right, that happens as we are on the journey, right? So I'm going to open by sharing some symbolism about boats, and we'll tie it into the message here in just a little bit, but I'm going to be reading from this book, the Book of Symbols. And I'll put a link in the description where you can buy this book. It's really cool. It's a great resource. And also, check out my new paper clips. These are my new bookmarks. I thought those were just super cool little coffee cups. So, all right. So let's dive in. Okay. So if you have the book, it's going to be on page 450. So it says, "The boat immediately evokes a passage and the containing vessel that carries one over watery depths. The soundness of the boat is important because its integrity comprises a boundary, sometimes between life and death. For this reason, in most cultures, boat building has been surrounded by ritual practices, taboos, and superstitions that have to do with the tension between forces that function to keep the boat afloat and those that would submerge it." And so this next part I'm going to read it just really speaks to me, and it's really going to all of it's going to tie into the message, but if you're making notes, I would just go ahead and just give you a little tip to pay extra attention here. So it says, "The basic form of any boat is the empty space it contains, as well as the cavity it makes in the surface of the water. The boat's resiliency depends on this small incursion into water's domain. The relationship and secret identity between the holding vessel and the deep waters that buoy it up and can also break it into pieces is nuanced and emotional. A linking with our first crossing into birth, with the uterus, the rocking cradle, and the saving ark, and with our last crossing in the ship of death, leading us back to the swaying, gliding, somnolent rhythms of earliest childhood, of the primordial ocean and the night. Thus, the ship has often been experienced as an aspect of the great feminine, as mother or beloved, the strengths and vulnerabilities of whose holding body the captain or navigator must intimately know." So you can already pick up on the relationship between the vessel and the waters, right? There's this intimacy there, this very important relationship and a delicate balance, right? There's so much heavy symbolism regarding the spiritual, right? And the soul's journey. And so the numinous aspect of the water, the fact that we are referred to as vessels in the Bible, it's just all incredible, right? And sometimes it takes these kind of metaphors to feel like we're doing the describing of our journey justice. It's like, just to put it in layman's terms and just bullet point and make it very simple, it's kind of like that takes away from the richness of the experience. And so it's kind of like we have to use parables and metaphors, right? And so I just really enjoyed reading that. I hope you enjoyed it too. So I'm going to skip down a little bit and I'm going to quote where it says, "Crossing Odyssey voyage. The boat or ship is the vehicle of our mythical peregrinations or journeys," right? And then it says, "The human ego is carried in vessels, conscious and unconscious, ships of imagination, intellect, hope, faith, courage, illusion, fantasy, and dream, on psyche's shifting currents. All of our senses help us to navigate winds and tides, fathom the depths, and take our bearings. We are moored and lose our moorings, sail against the tide or with the tide in auspicious winds, are buffeted by storms, drift, circumvent the hidden reefs and glaciers, or are wrecked by them. Is the vessel seaworthy? Has it an anchor or a sturdy pair of oars? Is its size and provision proportionate to the size of the waters? So primal is the idea of the boat that holds us, secure above the chaos that houses have been built in the image of a ship. So have Christian churches, with the cross as the mast. The boat denotes those things, material, spiritual, energetic, that suddenly appear on our horizons and are brought to shore. Sailboats, cruise ships, battleships, ships of commerce, ferry boats, lifeboats, barges, canoes, the ship laden with goods, unexpected riches, or the fruits of long labor. My ship has come in, quote unquote, right? Ships that carry the forces of terror, possession, piracy, and war. Alchemy depicted its opus of psychological process as a circumnavigation to the four ends of the earth, and as a voyage in opposite directions at the same time, suggesting a destination of wholeness. The opus was also perceived as an odyssey, long, tedious, heroic, and beset by dangers. One could easily get lost traversing those unknown waters, be swallowed by the things of the deep, or get becalmed. The boat embodies the voyage of life, of coming full circle, and almost everywhere the boat has signified the last journey, the reuniting one with the waters of the beginning, the passing over to the yonder shore. Often it is a solitary journey, not always a bleak one. Peace, peace, to be rocked by the infinite. And that's from Stanley Kunitz in The Long Boat. All right, y'all, so I know that spring is not far away because I can't hardly read my book anymore without my sunglasses. So I'm gonna wear these for the rest of the presentation, or at least for a little while, right? I hope you enjoy that. This book is just, I love the way it's written. I love the way these symbols are presented, and how there's just so much richness. So definitely there's a theme of union. There's a theme of adventure, and what's an adventure without risk, dangers, and mistakes, right? Just like our life. And so it's not like we go looking for those things, but they're just there. And, when you're naive, or childlike and ignorant in that manner, then you're going to happen upon these things more frequently until we learn our lessons, right? And so it's, when I was reading all about the symbolism here, I was reminded of Noah and how he sent the birds out, from the ark to try and find land. And it's interesting because we're going to be talking about the story of Jonah in the Bible here in a minute. And Jonah, one of the meanings of that name is dove or a pigeon. So it's just really cool to find how all of these things, these stories, myths, and symbols are all linked together. Again, it's kind of like if you think about, God being, almighty, being everything, and then it talks about in the Bible how the waters were divided, and you can just kind of get really curious about that, and just start to imagine, all the different layers of meanings that you can find just in that one statement, with the waters being divided, right, during the creation process. And so I think a lot of us feel closer to God when we are close to a large body of water. I know I do. I love the ocean, and it's just it's very powerful, and it's kind of like a chance, an opportunity to stand there and be a direct witness firsthand to that power. And it's like just a little glimpse, of the power of God. And same thing is found in storms. There's a lot of people that just love literally storm chasing and things like that, just to be a witness to the power. But again, anytime you are near great power, there's always risk. And so there was one part in this where I didn't catch when I initially read it, but when I was reading it to you all, it stood out to me. And see if I can find it again. it was talking about the relationship between the vessel and the deep waters, talking about how, you know, it can support it. The waters can support the boat. It can buoy it up, and it can also break it into pieces, right? Because it's nuanced. And that's how God is. You know, I'm thinking of the sword, you know, that Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. So there's a theme of unity and division all at once. Again, this greater truth that is able to teach us about paradox, because if God is everything, if God is whole and complete, and we are blessed enough through his grace and mercy to be able to be a part of his spirit, right, which the Bible talks about, then it's kind of like you know, considering us as vessels, it's sort of like we are able to contain a portion of those waters, right? And so anytime you have these stories that are have the symbols of boats and large bodies of water, and, you know, all the adventures that happen on the water, I feel like examining what happens within the story can give us insights to the nature of our reality, especially as we are a part of God, of the spiritual realm. It's just kind of like clues. Even if a person's writing a piece of fiction, that's still where these archetypal symbols can come through that person, through what Carl Jung calls the collective unconscious, right? They're still coming through this person, right? Truth can still be spoken to us. We can find it in that manner, even if it is a work of fiction. So I just encourage you, if you have interest, to maybe that's just a rabbit hole that might be fun for you, you know, a hobby, to just focus in on examining all the different stories you can find that are related to, you know, adventures on the water, you know. So, but yes. So again, we're going to be talking about the symbolism of transformation on the journey of the soul, and how the will of God always wins. It always wins. Because again, we're told in Romans, I believe, how he works all things. He works all things for the good of those who love him. So he's always in control, and it's just a matter of if we are in alignment with his will or not. Right. So I want to share a quote from another book I have, and I haven't read this book, but it's it looks like one I'm probably going to dive into pretty soon. And so it's by Melissa Wright, called Mythos, a map to myths, metaphors, and dreams. And just the bits and pieces that I've kind of flipped through and read are just really incredible. So if you have the book, it's going to be on page 28, and she's detailing out an interview from the 80s between Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyers. Okay, and Joseph Campbell is quoted as saying, "One can say that the images of myth are reflections of spiritual and depth potentialities of every one of us, and that through contemplating those, we evoke those powers in our own lives to operate through ourselves." So this is really interesting to me. There's a theme of evoking, which kind of feels like sorcery or witchcraft, but then again, there's a lot of things, a lot of verses in the Bible where we are told that faith is powerful, you know, coupled with actions, but belief is like the foundation of those actions to help bring about, you know, our desires, you know. And so yes, so I was thinking about where it says images of myth, and the first thing that came to my mind was idols, you know, because we're not supposed to have, you know, any other gods before God, right? The creator God, the one true God, right? And so it's funny because that particular verse in the Bible that says you shall have no other gods before me goes on to elaborate of statues essentially, and how I think during that time in history it was common for people to, you know, actually make, out of clay and stone, and I think it even specifies silver and gold, literal statues that people worshipped. And you know, it goes on to elaborate in that part of the Bible that says, "You shall have no other gods before me," that when a person is focused on, paying attention to, contemplating, just meditating on an idol, okay, it's described really wonderfully, and I'll drop the Bible verse here, but it says, you know, they become like that idol when that happens. So there's this, like, I don't know what the word would be. You start to assimilate. You start to acquire the qualities of what you focus on. You start to become like whatever it is you're meditating on, right? And so it explains how, you know, the idols, the statues of silver and gold, have a mouth but they can't speak, and they have hands but they can't hold, and ears that can't hear, and so on and so forth. And that was really interesting to me, because the first thing I thought of was like a robot, and how, you know, it has all of these, in the quote it says potentialities, right? It has all of the functional parts, right? Just like a human being, to move and talk and you know, operate, but yet something has to power it. It's kind of like empty. There's no life force energy there. You know, the numinous aspect is not there. It's void of that. And so I was reminded of wolves in sheep's clothing. That's kind of what it's like. It's like there's, you know, the sheep's clothing, but the intentions underneath, they're not really void, but yet the way they appear to us oftentimes is empty and void, because they're hiding their true nature. See, they're like this, it's like if you ever have the opportunity to see, you know, their true nature when they don't know that you're able to witness this in some way, then you can see, oh my gosh, they do actually have a personality. And with you, all you've ever known is they've just been very robotic, like a brick wall, just void of any emotions, just very, what it is it like a poker face. They're just very, very controlled, because they don't want you to know their true nature, because their true nature is corrupt. See? And so that's kind of, you know, I know a lot of people with personality disorders are described as being empty and void, and I don't want to really go off on that branch and just dive into that too deep, because I think there's a lot of complexity there. But what I do want to do is focus on the fact that in my own experience, through my own observation, that's what I've been able to witness firsthand and experience firsthand in my life, is that there is substance to these people, but they're keeping it from you. So all you meet with is the duality of their mask and the void. That's it. You're not going to get to what they have in the closet, right? So I thought that was interesting. So, because they typically do idolize things like materialism and money and just things of the world. You know, they are of the world. We are in the world, but we strive to not be of it and like it and align with it, right? So, you know, I don't think that this, when Joseph Campbell is making this statement, I don't see it as anything bad. I don't see it as any kind of sorcery or witchcraft. When he says, one can say that the images of myth are reflections of spiritual in-depth potentialities of every one of us, and that through contemplating those, we evoke those powers in our own lives to operate through ourselves. Because I'm reminded also of Jesus, right? He taught in parables, and the parables contained symbolism. That's what they're made of, you know, and characters. And so that's also what we find in myth form, legends, right? Fairy tales, folklore, these just incredibly rich stories that have been preserved throughout history and time, right? So it's like that. That's how I view his intentions when he makes this statement, the power of symbolism, right? And our contemplating on those, and how the contemplating process itself can manifest what the symbols are representing within our lives. It's the same kind of process as, when Jesus taught in parables. So there's, again, these symbols, these personifications, I see them as representations of like the qualities of God and the truths of God, right? And I think it just all too does depend on the person's intentions, but I just wanted to share that. So, all right. It's almost like when we're focused on something and we're meditating on it, contemplating it, we're mulling it over and over and over in our mind. And in that manner, it's kind of like a prayer, whatever we're focusing on. So part of that quote was evoking, to contemplate on something means that at some point we will be evoking the power of it. So Mark chapter 11 verse 24 says, "Therefore I say unto you, what things soever you desire, when you pray, believe that you receive them and you shall have them." So belief is like the key that puts all this into action, right? And this is important because, when we read things like this, it's like counsel straight from God's human representative, because this was a quote from Jesus, right? So the etymology of the word contemplate, from the Latin contemplare, means to gaze attentively, to observe, consider. And so we have, breaking down the words, actually from com, meaning together or with, and then you have templum, meaning area for the taking of auguries, or space for the taking of auguries. So again, we have this theme of this space, of this expansion in order for auguries. Now the definition of augury is a sign of what will happen in the future, not what might happen, but what will happen in the future. So again, we have this, you can kind of start to see there's power when there's space created, when there's expansion created, things get sorted out. Think about it. I was recently talking about density and becoming, going through the refinement process of getting rid of the, what do you call it? All the parts and pieces that are not necessary and not serving you or whatever. It's like an alchemical type process, right? And so you become solid, but it's all good, like gold, And so, during that process, though, there has to be this breaking apart. There has to be a dissolving, some type of expansion, so that the different pieces can move around. They can move about and then be disposed of, right? So there's magic that happens when we consider concepts like space and expansion and dividing the waters and all of this. It's kind of like unity, we might say, comes from first division. Creation first, or creation has to come from destruction first, right? I'll get it out one of these days. So, I've already had my coffee. Let me have a little bit of water. Maybe that'll help. All right. So Jonah. Let's talk about Jonah. Jonah. The name in the online etymology dictionary is from the Hebrew Yonah, meaning dove or pigeon. And then this was really interesting. Also, in nautical use and extended, it says, it means a person on a shipboard regarded as the cause of bad luck. Bad vibes, bad juju, whatever you call it. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, if that's the right proper use of that word or whatever, but you get the point, right? Bad luck. Okay, so the story of Jonah, I'm just going to touch on this. He was called, actually, from God to preach repentance, okay? But he rebelled. He didn't want to do it. And so he tried to escape God's plan by fleeing on a ship, okay? Think about that for a minute. See if you can relate that to your life. Has there ever been a time in your life when God started to lead you in a particular direction? You started to notice synchronicities, perhaps. You suddenly developed a great interest in a particular area of research or study, right? In other words, you were starting your first steps on this path and it felt right, okay? But something tempted you or tested you or distracted you or whatever it was and got you off of that path, right? Away from God's plan. So this is kind of where I went in my mind when I was reading this. And I'm going to share the website. I'm about to read a quote from in the description. It seems pretty cool. All right, talking about Jonah. So remember, he didn't want to preach about repentance. So he rebelled and he tried to escape God's plan by fleeing on a ship. Okay, so then it says, but Jonah was thrown overboard. Jonah was thrown overboard and swallowed by a great fish, which is also heavily symbolic. Later, the fish spit him out on the shoreline. Then, finally, Jonah obeyed God's command and went to, gosh, I should have looked up the pronunciation, so I'm sorry for not doing that beforehand, but Nineveh? Nineveh, to preach. Okay, so in other words, he did what he was supposed to do all along, right? His preaching was successful, and 120,000 people in Nineveh turned to God in obedience, sparing themselves punishment from God. So that's the power of our obedience to the calling, right? That's the power of what it means when we walk in alignment with God's calling for our life. It's powerful. It's powerful. And we see what happens when we don't, when we veer off, okay? Change lanes, get off our path. So, so I ask you, is it possible that you veered off the path of your purpose, your destiny, according to God? So Matthew chapter 4, verse 4 says, it is written, which when I hear that, it's like there's this air of certainty, like this cosmic contract, right? Like it's written, it's for sure. It's not debatable. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Again, here we have this great symbolism of the mouth, of a lot of stories, fairy tales. Even in the Bible, there's stories of, swallowing and vomiting and spitting out in the mouth and words. And so there's a lot, the breath of God. There's so much symbolism that's related to those things. Yeah. So I feel like, we have two options in life that create two outcomes. It's like either God will have, either God will have his way, right? Or we're going to suffer, which he'll still have his way. He's still going to work all of it. It's just a matter of, I think the suffering part is when we're not in alignment in our mind and heart and actions in our life, and instead of just compiling onto, is that even compile? I guess instead of piling onto the suffering we already have, if we start to blame ourselves and shame ourselves, it just makes it even worse. But he's going to turn the ship around for us, right? If we are able to withstand the stormy sea, the waters, because they're powerful. It's the sword. It divides. It's going to show you. It's going to be a reflection to you when you come face to face with all of the complexities and layers of truth, it's going to reflect back to you, yeah, the falsehood and deception that, the world is just enmeshed in and rich in, but also how it's affected you and the parts where you weren't true to your own inner compass, your own inner guiding light, where you really, on some level, even if you didn't have the thoughts, the logic, the concrete evidence to go along, with stepping on the right path, you felt that you should do it, and maybe you didn't anyway. So it's there comes a time of, is this the right word to say, like reckoning? There comes a time of awakening, of realization, where that's like the crossroads. That's where, okay, now you have enough pieces of the puzzle that you need to make a decision, right? So, yeah, to evoke, and Campbell's quote, I made a note to reread it to you all. So, it says, one can say that the images of myth are reflections of spiritual in-depth potentialities of every one of us, and that through contemplating those, we evoke those powers in our own lives to operate through ourselves. All right, so the word evoke means to call or summon forth, right? To summon forth or out, which is a common theme in myth. Just even in the most recent story of Frozen, Elsa, she hears this voice calling her, and it won't stop. It's just echoing from somewhere out there, somewhere afar, right? And so she goes searching for it. So John chapter 1 verse 1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Again, there's significance regarding words, speaking, the act of swallowing. There's many verses on that. So in looking at the story of Jonah, if we remember the meaning of Jonah as a person on a shipboard regarded as the cause of bad luck, right? He was swallowed up and spit out and convicted to do what God put on his heart, okay? So we might say he was reborn when he was spit out. He was made new. He was given a second chance, okay? So, if that doesn't give us hope, I don't know what will. It's not, when you go through this transformation, this journey of transformation, and you have these transformative experiences along the way, it's not us that ceases to exist. It's the spirit of death that contaminated us that gets killed off, that gets purged, right? So I'm reminded of the verse also that says, death is swallowed up in victory. So, in your journaling, if you're taking notes or whatever, you might consider asking yourself, are you living in and from the victory? So it's when the corruptible puts on the incorruptible, okay? So corruption essentially means spiritual contamination. To corrupt, part of that, there's a past participle, a stem of rumpere. So corrupt, that stem would be rup, R-U-P, which means to break, right? I'm thinking of, to rupture. So this is, to me, this is what it means to put on the full armor of God. When people look at you, right? Not just new people that you meet, but even people that you've known for years. I just want to remind you, they don't know what you've been through. They can't, because even people close to you, nobody can walk in your shoes. Nobody can. So because of that, your new armor, your new self, may even be perceived or mistaken as arrogant. They might look at you and say, man, there's just a lot of extreme confidence there, to the point of arrogance. But the truth is, you've been chewed up and spit out. Right? Or you might say ripped up, right? You've been touched or contaminated by corruption, by darkness, by evil, okay? And so any confidence that you have is actually conviction from the Holy Spirit to follow your God-given purpose. And I feel like this conviction that's now within you, that's filling your vessel to the brim and motivating you every day to the point of exhaustion, it's a beautiful thing. It's the workings of God through us as vessels, right? It's magic. It's numinous. But you experience it as conviction, but on the outside it can easily be mistaken with confidence, right? And it's so powerful. It's like people can sense this power within you, but they don't understand it because they're like those idols that they've become like, because they focused so much on the material realm. And so they have eyes, but they can't see. And they're not functioning in the spiritual. They don't understand the power that they see within you. It's mysterious to them, right? It might even be intimidating. They might be jealous of it. They just don't understand it. It's not you and your ego. It's what's inside of you now. And so I feel like people sense this power, but they mistake it as ego. They mistake it as extreme confidence, again, to the point of arrogance. Okay? Yes. So only you can know this because you're the one experiencing it. Okay? So, again, just to differentiate and drive the point home, confidence is wavering. It's unstable. It's flighty, right? Conviction is sustainable and steadfast. So really and truly, it's a personal matter between you and God, okay, anyway. So just invite you to rest in the personal nature of your journey. You don't have to prove anything to anybody, okay? Just plant that in your heart and run with it, and just know what you know. You know what I mean? And I'm just reminded of that quote I found. I'm glad I found it again yesterday, and I put it in my video at the end. It's a quote from Dr. Seuss, you know, that says, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. So you don't have to be crippled by trying to live your life in a manner where you're censoring yourself every step along the way, because that's going to stunt the flow of life within you. This life force energy is animating you now as the vessel, okay? You are being obedient now. And so I feel like all of the attempts by the darkness that's, you know, coming through people who don't realize they're vessels for the darkness, it's trying to halt that life force energy that's pouring out of you, okay? Because your cup is full. And so to stop yourself and censor and give attention to it is just, it's like that book I shared with y'all, Becoming a Writer by Dorothea Brand, where she's talking about one of the best things you can do as a writer is to never edit as you're in the creation process, as it's flowing. Anybody who's ever been an artist of any kind, painting, writing, music, songwriting, whatever it is, knows that you get into this state, literally, of flow. There's a lot of different names for it, but one of the names is flow, a state of flow. And so in order to become a great writer, she's talking about in the book, is she's like, don't stop it, just let it come out. And then later, once that spirit has washed over you, and you kind of know, I know if you are a creative person, you know what I mean when I say that. It's like this creative spirit washes over you, and then it's kind of like it just suddenly leaves you, and you know, you're It's gone. The moment's passed, which is why you can't force it. If you have time on your schedule and you're like, okay, now I'm going to sit down and paint, but that spirit is not upon you, it's not going to happen. Or if you force it, then it's not going to come out right. So it's the same kind of thing. Just, don't edit along the way, whether you're creating or whether you're living your life. Because again, the lie is that anybody even has the potential to be perfect, and that's not possible. These people are fooling themselves, who are pointing a finger at you, at your imperfections. It's kind of like, yeah, we all have imperfections. So what? You know what I mean? So just that's kind of the process that I've gone through in my life, as part of this journey. So, but it's true. It's true. Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. That's how you know your people. It really is a blessing in that manner, because it's kind of like, how else, without this dynamic that we've just been talking about, how else are you going to find your people? Or even more so, your person. If you feel like you are meant to be married or in a partnership, it's kind of like, how are you going to find that person? Or your tribe, your people, right? You got to have some way to know. So you already know what it feels like, or what it's like to feel broken or spiritually contaminated, right? That's what doubting that inner guiding light can do to us. So I hope that you'll join me in striving to hear the call of your inner guiding light, the will of God within you. That's what it is, right? First and foremost. Because if you're meditating on that, you're going to get in alignment with that. You're going to evoke the power of that in your life. And not only are you going to be changed for the better and impacted in a wonderful, great way, but also many other people, right? So that has to be first and foremost the call of God within, the inner guiding light or inner compass over all the noise of this crazy world. And I just hope that you'll join me in letting it lead the way. So I hope that this has got the wheels turning for you. I hope that it was inspirational and encouraging and enlightening and gave you some things to think about. And I just thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.
It's full of love.